Did each of you have a clear understanding of what your final contribution to the show would be, or were you just kind of like in a nebulous kind of not knowing if you'd be called back the next day sort of situation?
I'm happy to answer that. Did the show, got paid, went home. This is what happens 30 years later. It's the biggest surprise to me, and believe me, we all appreciate it. Thank you.
In terms of how many voice actors there were that came in, did the show, went home, I've got the original list of all the actors and all the characters that they played. I've also got somewhere to show you how we laid out all the forms that were used during the recording sessions so that we'd know every page that every actor had a line on so they could be ready. One of the things I did say I really wanted to do before we adjourned, I'd like you to hear from Don, and I'd like to tell you about what happened after the Transformers show. So I became a producer and director of mainly independent films, but a few years after Transformers, I was executive producer and co-writer on a movie for Showtime called Roswell, the UFO Cover-Up, with Kyle MacLachlan and Martin Sheen and Dwight Yoakam.
We weren't in it.
Say that again?
We weren't in it.
No. Well, Jeremy Kane was the director. I was just the executive producer and co-writer. So I can't be blamed for the fact we didn't cast you. But some of the others, I went on to make the film called Starry Night about Van Gogh, and Jesus in India, still very popular. I'll tell you the ones that are on Amazon Prime now. Jesus in India. There's the Life After Death Project 1 and 2. Before We Say Goodbye. My most recent movie is Marilyn Monroe Declassified. You can find that on Amazon Prime. Sure I'm leaving some out. What am I leaving out? I don't know. There's been like 10 films I did and a bunch of books. I brought some of the books. There's one book I wrote while I was at Marvel, and Stan Lee wrote the foreword to it, or the preface. It was called The Fires of Pele, Mark Twain's Legendary Lost Journal. And I still have a few of those left if any of you would like a copy. But I'm still producing and directing and working on a comedy and working on things for children now.
Alan and I are available.
And also, I know.
Can I give you my resume?
Yes. I think I've got it. I've got it.
You don't mark off those names when people die, do you?
One important one I left out was the Sci-Fi Boys, which was the history of special effects in films with Peter Jackson as the host, which I produced and directed. And Don Glut kindly was not only in that film, but also in the bonus features allowed me to use some of his original movies. And one of the things that Don has scolded me for, we're great friends and he hasn't scolded me for many things, but we had a little misunderstanding and I edited some of his original 16 millimeter films for the bonus features of the Sci-Fi Boys, and Don did not want them edited. So I stand corrected, Don. Tell us about what you've been doing.
Well, what I've been doing after Transformers, I wrote a lot more animation. I did a bunch of lectures. I lectured all over the world on dinosaur movies. I started a record company called Fossil Records, and we did 3 albums of paleo-related rock and roll songs for grown-ups. More recently, and then I started making movies. I have an independent company called Pecos Born Productions. Pecos Born because I was born in Pecos, Texas. And most recently, I just finished a movie called Tales of Frankenstein, which was released last year to coincide with the 200th anniversary of Mary Shelley's novel. One of my actors, I think, is in the back of the room there, who played a sleazy morgue attendant. And and I'm also writing comic books again. I've written about 100 stories for a magazine called The Creeps, and I got a bunch of issues out there for sale if anybody wants to buy one side. And just Tons of stuff. I'm always busy. And
Tell us about I Was a Teenager.
well, I took all my amateur movies and we put them out on a DVD set, 12 hours of stuff, and called I Was a Teenage Movie Maker. Then I needed some music to go along with it, so I got one of my old rock and roll colleagues out of retirement, and we recorded a soundtrack for it. Then I wrote a book, all with the same title. So if you ever want to see my amateur movies, when I made when I was 9 years old in the backyard, they're out there. So that's what I've been up to. But mostly writing comics for the creeps and making movies. I have 2 recent movies, Tales of Frankenstein and Dances with Werewolves. So that's what I've been doing.